Very exciting. See you all here. Thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon for us, probably morning for some of you and evening for others. Really happy to see you here. Got a few more folks joining us, so we'll get rolling here in just a minute. All right. Well, let's get started. So I'm Cecile, and I am one of the co-founders and instructors here at Round Sky Solutions. And thank you so much for joining our introductory session on facilitating cooperation. I'm really excited to meet you all today, and it's lovely to see some familiar faces here. I'm particularly excited to share what we're learning and continue to learn about facilitating cooperation. And so as we get rolling here today, there's a couple of things that we wanted you to know about Round Sky.
Great. Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Daniel, also a co-founder and instructor here at Round Sky. And I wanted to give a little introduction to us. Round Sky is a remotely operated worker-owned cooperative, meaning we're a business where the workers own it all together. And the first thing I want to share is that we believe that there's at least two approaches to take when building shared leadership. Training the collective through the tools and practices, and training the individuals, within the collective. And many approaches to leadership or organizational development, take one or the other of those approaches, and we really believe in weaving those together. And we think that that's essential and part of what makes us unique. And even if the tools and processes that we're all functioning, all the things that we present, we're all functioning quite well within our groups. We also benefit from personal development, from the individuals growing and learning and nurturing their own self-awareness and groundedness and emotional intelligence in their leadership. Just a note that we thought that the settings were for everyone to be muted when they came in. If you're unmuted, please mute yourself. There might be some opportunities to speak out loud later. Okay, great. So that leads me to the second thing that I wanted to get into, which was that we approach our courses and trainings with this focus on both the hard skills and tools and the soft skills, in a sense, right? We can consider things like personal development and somatic practices as the soft skills. And so today you'll hear us talk about our Cooperative Leadership Certification Program. We call it the CLCP for short. And we'll reference some of the tools that we teach within this training to work with uncertainty, to help facilitate meetings in a way that is in line with cooperative values. And if what we're if what we're offering here resonates with you and you like this approach to facilitation, consider applying. Once you apply, you'll be invited to a more in-depth interview with us. One of us can talk with you and see if it's a good fit. And applications are due on Sunday, January 28th.
Wonderful. Many of us are on Zoom today, but I just wanted to touch base on a couple of logistics before we get too far. First of all, this session is going to be recorded and we will be sharing it back with you. And if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat box. To find the chat box in the toolbar, it's likely along the bottom of your screen. You want to just look for a little speaking bubble and click on it. And Daniel's gonna do a little hello in the chat box for you all so you can see where it is. And we will be leaving time for questions at the end. So feel free to put them in the chat box as you have them. We may be able to get to them as we go, or we'll leave them for the Q&A at the end. And if you happen to have any technical issues, you can chat me directly and I'll do my best to help you out. And as Daniel just mentioned, if you can stay on mute, that will help with the recording so that the people who watch this afterwards get the clearest recording. And lastly, we only have 1 quick hour to go over the materials. So you may leave with questions, which is good. We'll get to what we can today, and there'll be more of these events. And you can also reach out to us directly with your questions.
Great. And with that, we wanted to do some little breakout rooms to introduce you to each other, to have a chance to meet some of the other folks on the call and to do some introductions. And we'll demo that in a sense ourselves. In the breakout rooms, we'll ask you to introduce yourselves. You'll have about 4 minutes total, so about a minute each. There'll be groups of like 3 or so. And just a quick introduction to yourself. You might share your name, pronouns if you like, where you're located, and what organizations you're connected with. And then the key question, like what brought you here today? What's a question you have or a topic that you're interested to explore related to cooperative leadership? And before we do that, Cecile and I will just do our little introduction so you can all hear just slightly more from us and kind of a model for how we can go through the introductions. Let me do my little intro. Okay, so I'm Daniel, again, as I said, he, him, pronouns are great. I live in Vermont. That's the ancestral and still current home of the Abenaki Nation. I'm one of the founders, facilitators, and coaches here at Round Sky Solutions Cooperative. And I've been one of the main instructors on these trainings that we're kind of introing today. And so what brought me here today is a curiosity to meet people. I really love seeing what people are up to in our network and who's out there in the world doing meaningful things. And more specifically, I've been doing some custom trainings recently and realizing, again, the power of really grounded facilitation so that a cooperative team can really feel held in the process of working together. And as a facilitator, I've been noticing how much of that comes from my own groundedness and my own body. And so I'm curious to explore that more with you all today.
Thanks, Daniel. I'm Cecile. My pronouns are she, her. I also live in Vermont, the home of the Abenaki people. And I'm excited to be here today with you all to explore this question of what it means to actually facilitate, to enable cooperation. We all work in teams, and sometimes those experiences work smoothly and generate great joy in the process. At other times, things could get a little sticky with unspoken tensions and assumptions generating endless conflict and misalignment between people. So on that note, I'm happy to be here to continue the conversation with you all about this really important capacity to facilitate cooperation. And I'm going to put you all into breakouts now. Enjoy connecting with each other. You'll have about 4 minutes or so. All right, here you go. And you'll need to click the little join button if you want to join a breakout room. So hopefully you see that on your screen as an option. Welcome to those of you who are just joining. The other folks are in breakout rooms, checking in, and let's see, I think I will try to put you all in breakout rooms.
And we'll just be very brief, just a moment to check in breakout rooms. And
welcome, folks. We're in breakout, so we're going to put you in a breakout just to check in briefly.
Just names and where you're located, what drew you to the call.
No one was in my breakout room, so I came back.
Oh, great. Well, good for you, Claire. Let me see what I can do for you.
Try again.
Yes, try again. Exactly. Let's see. It's interesting. It's not showing you in the unassigned.
It was room 7.
It was room 7. Okay. One, two.
So folks just arriving, most folks are in breakout rooms now, just doing little introductions, and they'll be coming back shortly. So at this point, I imagine that those of us who are here might just stay here. And yeah, welcome to the call. Glad you're here.
Hannah, what does your t-shirt say?
Oh, wasn't sure if I'd be on video today. It just says abolish border imperialism.
Nice. Oh, that's great.
Well, I'm Claire and I'm here with Desa. Yay. And we work with the Proud Institute in Eugene, Oregon.
Oh,
Nice.
sweet.
Wonderful, welcome.
I don't know how we connected with you, but whatever.
Here we are all together now. This is great. Super.
Hannah,
So,
where are you?
and
Go ahead, Cecile.
well, yeah, I was just gonna say, Claire, I have not figured out how to put you into breakout rooms, so we're
worries.
just gonna hang out here and
No worries.
enjoy each other's company. So, Danielle, I think you had a question for Hannah.
Well, I was just like, Hannah, where are you calling in from?
San Rafael, Bay Area, California.
Wonderful, welcome.
My old stomping grounds.
Mhm, mhm. Nice. Well, welcome, Oscar and Anna. We are just the rest of the group is in breakouts, and so we're just hanging out here in the main room. They're going to be joining us back here in just a couple of minutes. So we won't try to put you into a breakout room just yet. We'll have other chances to interact with each other. So welcome, welcome.
Have you been doing these webinar things to build your course before, or is this a new adventure?
We have been doing these for a while. Yes, this is it's a kind of typical pattern for us to, do some webinars leading up to our larger course. And it's been a great way to like just kind of be in gentle communication with a wider network, and to see who all is out there, and curious
Yeah.
about our work in some way, or just curious, not so much about us, but about this idea of cooperative facilitation, and how do we work together better as teams.
Yeah, Proud promotes co-ops as the core, economic structure alongside individual craftsmen, entrepreneurs, and state larger things run by the government that isn't the US government, the government of the future. But so we're very much interested in this.
Wonderful.
Welcome back from breakout rooms, folks. If you notice, you could mute yourself again, just so we don't have too much noise on the line, since you're all probably talking with each other in your breakout rooms. I'm sure that was way too short, but hopefully you had a moment to introduce yourselves to each other. Welcome back. The rooms are still closing. Some folks might take another 20 seconds or so to arrive, so we'll see. Yeah, welcome back. If you haven't muted yourself now, it's probably a good time to do that, so that we have good, clear sound on the main channel here. Okay. Well, I think we're all now, and I was just saying to some folks that muting is good to create some good quiet space here in the main room. I hope you had fun introducing with each other. Yeah, I'm sure that was too short, but nice to get a little flavor. We had a little checkout in the main room too, with some folks who arrived late and didn't have time to put them in the breakout room. Well, right now I wanted to do just a little grounding and arriving exercises. It's one of the things we love to do in our cooperative meetings is to pay attention to our body. One of the things that's helpful is, feeling grounded, allowing our bodies to be really immersed in the moment and to be rooted in our own sensitivities and our own agency and our own ability to reorient to our own emotional and relational contexts, our capabilities. So kind of being grounded and in ourselves is a good place to start from. So let's start the rest of this call with a little bit of that. If you'll just go with me, do whatever works for you to just kind of be present and arrived and grounded. And I'll offer some suggestions that you can kind of pay attention to, or, tune me out and just do what works for you to just really, really arrive. So, yeah, you might close your eyes or soften your gaze, up to you. I like to feel, one place I like to start when I'm paying attention to my body is the place where my body's in contact with the supportive surfaces underneath me. Like, where is gravity holding me against the floor, against my chair? So paying attention to my feet. Now you might pay attention to your feet and see if you can notice just that little feeling of being squished. Like your toes, the pads of your toes, or your heels, balls of your feet, just slightly compressed against the ground or into your shoes. And just noticing that, what does that actually just feel like? What's it feel like to feel that sense of compression? You might notice that something changes with your breath. If you really allow yourself to feel that compression, I notice that spontaneously, I just want to take a deeper breath and a longer exhale, a little sigh. I'm not trying to force my breath to do anything, but I'm noticing it just kind of opens up a little bit. Yeah, so maybe a longer breath. You could even let that out with a sigh or a little hum. Yeah, good sounds. Yeah, and what else helps you feel grounded and present? Another thing for me is when I'm coming back from that kind of interior space is opening my eyes and letting them just take in the space around me. Just no particular agenda, just kind of letting my eyes go where they want to go and seeing what's around me, noticing the environment I'm in. And as you're looking around, you might notice this device that we're all on the other side of. And I've got my gallery view set up here, and wow, there's dozens of you here to connect with. What's it feel like? Almost like imagining that we're in a big circle in a big room or something like that, and we're all here together. What's that feel like to be in a room full of people, even in this virtual way? And again, maybe noticing your breath, letting that just relax and long exhale. Wonderful. Well, thank you, everyone. That's my little somatic arrival, as I like to call it. And I'll turn the slides back on and we'll continue.
As we settle back into the whole group here, I want to offer a little context for our topic today. Being able to metabolize conflict into cooperation is a kind of a key feature or a key marker of a healthy collaborative team, which is easy to say, much harder to achieve consistently. From my perspective, part of the reason for this lies in the fact that we all have different perspectives, no matter how values aligned we might be. This difference in perspective arises from the fact that we're each unique individuals, people going through life with different histories, different sets of resources at our disposal, and different assumptions about how life works or how it should work. These differences can actually be a huge resource, affording a team the benefit of seeing issues from multiple angles, which can create better decisions, but only if a team really knows how to surface those differences and then synthesize those perspectives readily. Another reason that it's hard to metabolize conflict into cooperation is that life is uncertain. There's always something new and challenging to deal with, no matter how prepared we are. And managing that uncertainty with as much clarity as possible, without resisting what needs changing, can highlight the differences and increase the likelihood of conflict. A third reason is that people have differing ideas about how we actually cooperate, and it can be difficult to create time in our busy organizations to discuss the ground rules for how to cooperate. But without doing that, we will inevitably conflict about the basics. Do we need all team members to respond to emails within 24 hours, or is a week okay? What's our decision-making process? How about our accountability processes? Or working with emotionally charged content? Most teams, even the most committed to cooperation, operate with implicit power dynamics running the show. And until we can collectively articulate better ways to use our power in healthy ways, it's nearly impossible to shift how things get done. And today we're going to offer you a tiny taste of one of the many tools in our program for helping teams cooperate consistently, and some ideas on how to use somatics to resource yourself and your team to increase your capacity to facilitate cooperation.
Great. Thanks, Cecile. So the first approach we want to talk about is, again, getting connected to our body, like we just did, right? This somatic orientation, taking a moment for a somatic orientation. Somatics is about having a body. It's about being in our bodies. It's about our relationship with our bodies, our conversations with our bodies. Somatics is a term that encompasses, like we've always had bodies, right? So this is an ancient, indigenous, orientation to like the reverence and wholeness of being in our bodies, right? But there's also like modern brain science and like study of the nervous system and things like that, right? So certainly our current cultural surroundings have disrupted and created an over-reliance on our minds, which we could say is like influenced by our own society's ways of creating systems of control and oppression. So coming back to our bodies, it can be a radical act of reclaiming something for ourselves and for our communities. We're taught to distrust our bodies and prioritize living to some external standards. And there's also so much trauma. There's so much wounding that makes it difficult for us to know where to begin in trusting our bodies. And fortunately, in recent decades, there's been a resurgence in interest in how our bodies and our nervous systems play a crucial role in our ability to be creative and communicative with others in our lives. And this burgeoning awareness of the impacts of trauma on our nervous system gives us new tools. There's the tools around understanding these things, gives us new tools for how to work together with more ease. So I just wanted to go over a couple of ways that the body is a resource. For one, it's through our bodies that we can ground ourselves, center ourselves, notice things. When we're centered, we can offer that to others. This somatic grounding invites us to become more familiar with and connected to whatever our actual sensory experience is, internal and external. And while at the same time creating space around it by noticing some of the other things that we can possibly feel. Like, can we notice, like, I might be feeling stressed, but can I also notice that my feet are still connected to the earth? So if we do that for ourselves, and we can do that checking in with each other and creating space for that, within a group context, so we can help everyone to be in a more, a little more balanced state to enter into the work together. Another thing that our bodies offer us is a source of wisdom and creativity. The body knows so many things that our conceptual minds don't. It's something we can tap into when we're choosing how to respond in an uncertain moment in our facilitation or in our participation. For example, relying more on our sense of our gut feelings about what to do next, rather than just our ideas, merely our ideas about what's going on. And it's also helps us become more skillful in holding bigger feelings. You know, if we do somatic work, it gives us the space to start to process and skillfully express overwhelming or hard to accept emotions that tend to live in the body. When we do this, we can, again, learn more about ourselves and the situation. We can become more available and empathetic to those experiences in other people. And we're less likely to enter into our own reactive states during challenging interactions. It can give us the skills to express ourselves from our bodies in honesty and hold space for others. So we can create a more emotionally transparent, environment of working together. And we include somatics in our facilitator training. The essence is that it helps facilitators grow up and meet people and situations more fully. In the context of uncertainty, it's important to check in and be aware of our bodies so we can fully show up with our own tensions. We have this whole concept of tensions I'll talk about more later. But the uncertainty of our environments, our contexts, whatever's going on around us can be sensed, but then also perhaps we can tap the wisdom of how to move forward. Cecile, you're on mute, actually. I'm sorry to say.
Details. Thanks, Daniel. Yeah, so there's something about the moments of conflict when I'm facilitating a team that I find myself wanting to hurry up and figure out how to deal with whatever came up right now. But to perhaps a little bit answer this question of, what is somatics? Could we define somatics, please? It's really about tapping into my own body's source of wisdom. And it's a body of work that we can get better at over time, better at learning to listen to hear what our bodies are telling us. And I noticed that slowing down is a more useful response, and it comes more naturally when I am listening to my body as a source of wisdom. So when things feel urgent in our meetings, a breath, a pause, a slowing down is a resource. In practice, this looks like taking a breath when I'm feeling myself getting scattered or defensive, and asking the group to pause when I notice that we're not listening to each other, and then also getting curious about my own assumptions and how I show up.
Yeah, and just wanted to offer up some prompting questions for to kind of take home questions about working with somatics. What do you notice in your body when you're about to facilitate a meeting or participate in a cooperative meeting? And how does this change depending on what's going on around you? What are your own tactics, in a sense, to regroup and ground so that you can think creatively about what to do next? And how could you facilitate others in your circle to remember the power of their own bodies as well?
Yeah, so somatics is a endless and huge territory that can be a deep resource for cooperative teams. And the second approach that we wanted to share with you is about the work that happens when we're in meetings and we see where dysfunction and disconnection and alignment are happening. There's a reason why people hate meetings, because often these meetings amplify that lack of alignment. However, they can also be a place for connection, moving forward, and a way to show up for each other. The key is really making our meetings highly relevant, collaboratively run, and responsive to our team's actual needs. So we've designed an optimal flow for a meeting process, which includes a bunch of elements that help us facilitate cooperation. One really practical and simple hack you can use is to have an agreed upon format for how your meetings will be run. This helps facilitate cooperation since everybody can be on the same page about what to expect. We can know when we're going to participate, when we're going to listen, etc. You can see the outline here of the meeting practice we've researched and synthesized as the best set of practices for cooperation. And today we're going to focus on just one part of this meeting flow, the process that we call agenda building or tension surfacing. However, in our leadership program, we'll dive deeply into each of these different sections of a meeting practice, and students will get a chance to practice facilitating and scribing for each piece of these. So if improving your facilitation and having more tools for working with your team is on your list, this course is a great place to develop yourself through proven methods for facilitating cooperative leadership and management. What we're here to share today is a method for participant-centered agendas. We call it attention-driven meeting practice, a practice we first learned from Holacracy and further developed with more methods and perspectives. To effectively facilitate cooperation, we need all the perspectives of our team to be put on the table, and we need clear processes for metabolizing and synthesizing those perspectives. So we do this through a process that lets everyone in a meeting build the agenda in real time with each other, and then prioritize together what is most important to focus on today. There are two features of this process, which I'll name right now, and then we can go into more detail about them. First of all, we offer an invitation for everyone to bring forward what they want to address or what's on their mind for their team. We encourage this to be a bodily somatic sensing of what we or the organization needs. And we call these motivations that people are sensing tensions. Secondly, we have an agreed upon place in our meeting practice, a way and a place for us to collect what we're each individually sensing, which we can then during agenda processing turn into beneficial outcomes for the team. So what do we mean by sensing tensions? Tensions arise from the difference between where we are and where we would like to be. We see tensions as potential creative action. They're not necessarily negative. Tensions, in our view, are something we are sensing that could be different, and there's a sense of potential energy in them wanting to find direction or action. During the agenda building portion of every meeting, we offer the opportunity for everyone to sense any tensions they may have and add them to the meeting agenda as agenda items. This is a mind and body approach to noticing what I feel motivated to bring up to the team for consideration. We can see this like an archery metaphor. Each person's creative contribution is their arrow, and their tension is them pulling the bowstring back and taking aim at a target. As facilitators, our job is to support people in surfacing or bringing up tensions and then guide team members through activities to process them to help the arrow find its target. You're probably familiar with the term feel the tension in the room, except then rather it just being something to avoid, it's something to name and invite. And it may be in the room or it may be just something one person is noticing. It's important to remember that we're not talking about tensions as a negative thing. It's just a neutral description of this potential energy. Tensions can even be pleasurable, like excitement or joy, say for the possibility of a new exciting project, or they can be more difficult, like feeling uncertain, stuck, or in conflict, perhaps because we haven't decided what path to take. For example, tensions can be as simple as questions where resolving them is just the sharing of information, or they can be motivations that in the end lead to big changes in the ways we operate together.
Yeah. And so what do we do with tensions? Before we get into the agenda section of each of our meetings, we have the facilitator ask the question, does anyone have any agenda items they'd like to add to the agenda? Or does anyone have any tensions they'd like to surface? We're typically all working from a shared document. That's another one of the tools that we have is a shared document where everyone can kind of like put their things onto the agenda. And either the scribe for the meeting or the team members themselves can add a short title for their agenda item right there on the list of items to consider. Or if it's in person, we can write it on a large sticky note or a whiteboard. You know, we can do this in an in-person meeting as well. And okay. One important note is we always have a tension holder for each item. the tension holder both identifies the tension and decides when the tension is moved forward for them, as we'll learn more about in a minute. We always ask this question in each meeting based on what people are sensing, but unaddressed tensions from past meetings can be brought forward again by a tension holder until it's been addressed. So in this case, this is a screenshot from a sample living agenda, as we call it. We just use a Google Doc that that gives Cecile put the template into the chat in case anyone wants to use a template for our Google Doc. We call it a living agenda, and we add tensions right there in the agenda portion of the Google document. If it's not clear what the tension is about, we ask the tension holder to briefly introduce their item in like 10 seconds or less, and to get it down there, put their name next to it, and introduce it really briefly. And then with the agenda built, the facilitator can choose which item to start with, informed by a collective prioritization, a little polling perhaps among the group, and invites the tension holder to give once we start on a particular tension, that we invite the tension holder to give more detail about introducing the item. And then we can use other process tools like integrative consent, which we teach in the training, to effectively move the tension forward towards a resolution for the person who's brought it forward. In a sense, it's like the team supporting each individual to get their particular dilemma resolved. Once a team has some practice with this, they can also add agenda items ahead of time. We have this kind of open document. We can put things up there in the middle of the week, and then at the end of the week or the beginning of the next week when we have our meeting, and that can help streamline things in the meeting time itself.
So we want to give you guys a chance to practice with this a little bit, but I wanted to mention that for some reason I do not have access to send a message to everybody. So I was unable to drop that that link into the chat box for you all. Daniel, I don't know if you have access to chatting everyone, but we will be sending a follow-up email with the links to the slideshow, the link to the template, and the recording. So you'll get it then if we're not able to get it to you today with these technical challenges. But regardless, we want to give you a chance to practice this a little. Even if you don't have the template that we're just referencing right now. So we wanted to invite you to think of a meeting on your radar. Maybe it's something that's coming up or something that you've just been through, and what tensions might you bring or might you have brought to that meeting? While you reflect on that, hopefully we're going to get some examples into the chat box. I'll just name one example for me. Like an example of a tension would be, should we accept an invitation to do this webinar with such and such organization? That's something I can put on the agenda. So we want you to put any tensions that you can think of into the chat box. Give us some examples, as many as you can think of items that you think could go on an agenda for your team that represent this sense of noticing that potential movement forward, those tensions for your team. And John says, building a shared budgeting process. Yes, that's a great tension. I like that a lot. Yes, where are we with hiring a new team member? Or adding a somatic practice to our meetings, like those. And any other offerings of tensions you've heard for yourself or for other teammates? Just to give us a sense of what this might be, what this might look like for you. Setting a date for our DEIB training, vacation time, voting on probationary members. These are great. Thank you, everybody. Really, really useful. Should we go back to the office? I like that. Yes, cultural differences for language use, new governance structures. Absolutely. Indeed. Well, thank you, everyone. These are fantastic tensions, and we'll just add one little detail, which is typically we have the tensions held by one person. So typically you put them on the agenda with your initials at the end. And so to move into why do this? Why run an agenda based on tension surfacing? So let's dig into that a little bit. For one reason, using the collaboratively designed meeting practice along with this tension surfacing means that you can show up to just about any meeting ready to facilitate, knowing that you'll do a good job and that it's going to be really relevant for that team that you're facilitating. It's also a practice that efficiently invites all team members to bring forward whatever's on their mind with respect to their team, from celebrations to work done well to things that aren't working or priorities that need revisiting, major impediments or stagnations. And it allows us to support each other in creating solutions to move those things forward. It also builds and subtly asks for engagement as everyone gets on the same page and everyone has an opportunity to put items forward. So it relieves the burden of just one person preparing an agenda. And we all get to collectively decide what gets discussed and because we then vote on that agenda before we actually start processing it. So in sum, we recommend trying to reframe your meetings with tensions to get at the heart of the matter and to source your agendas from your team to align on the work together. And we do this by tapping into the needs of your team members. So my own reflections in tension-driven meetings is that trust is paramount, and it can actually be built through reliably surfacing and processing tensions. It can also feel like a lot of responsibility to bring forward tensions if you or your team is not used to this type of format, or you're used to managers doing it for you. Ease into the process, take your time with it, treat it as an experiment. Also, it helps to be really somatically discerning whether something has been moved forward or not for you when you get to the part where you're talking it through with your team. And know that you can always revisit a tension or the agreement or output that was made as a result of processing a tension. So you don't have to get it perfect. Shooting for something that's good enough for now is a really helpful way to orient to moving these forward. And as a facilitator, it's really helpful and important to give the tension holder, the person who raised the tension, some time and space to process. You can offer suggestions to them if they don't, or you can ask the tension holder can ask the group for wisdom so that we can collectively work it through. And just know that some people in some tensions are going to need more time than others.
Great, thanks, Cecile. I wanted to say that managing the role of facilitator in cooperative settings takes a variety of approaches. And during this webinar, we offered a couple of tools. In our course, we go deeper into somatics and facilitating your group's tensions. We also work with personal development and how you want to grow as a person to better show up as a facilitator and a team member. In addition, managing power and distributing decision-making power and working through roles can also help us gain clarity about how we want to work together collectively. I'm often telling applicants in our training that participants learn these tools in order to build alignment and transparency through participation. Our tools are particularly good at helping groups experiment together, identify next steps, and bridge the individual sensing of our somatic sensing and our tension building with the needs of the collective so we can move forward in alignment. A next step for you would be to consider how you might bring these approaches into your leadership to increase your ability to facilitate responsiveness in your team and in yourself. If this resonates and you're curious to learn more with us this winter, submit your applications. We'll have a conversation about how you can integrate these tools into your work. You're welcome to join our learning cohorts, this winter to do that together. Applications are due January 28th, and we set up interviews with each applicant to have just a brief conversation about, is this a good fit? Does this make sense for you? Is this really the work that you want to get into? please feel free to join us. Cecile's put the no, Cecile can't do that, right? You still can't. I'll put that in the chat. Okay, great. There's a link to the page that describes the course and has the application for the training on our website on this page here. Yeah, over to you, Cecile.
Yeah, so I've seen a couple of questions come in to the chat box, but we're gonna take the next few minutes to just do a little Q&A. So if you've got a question, please pop it into the chat box. We're happy if you wanna raise your hand, we're happy to just have you dialogue and open your mic. So feel free to let us know that by raising your hand. And I see one question from Sangeeta. The tension holder is the person who surfaces the tension. That is correct. And they have a really important role in that process to help identify what's going to move that tension incrementally forward. Remember, I mentioned good enough for now. So the tension holder helps us know when we've moved an item forward. And they're also instrumental in helping us to determine what process we want to use to move that tension forward.
I see a question here about how would a group or a small team participate in this cohort? Yeah, talk to us. We do, if it's a small group, then we often welcome multiple people from the same organization into one of our cohorts. Our cohorts tend to be around 10 or less people per little section. So if it's a few people from a team, that's great. That can really add a lot of richness to have an organization represented in that sense. If it's a larger group, we also do custom trainings. We can do this training as a custom, just for an intact work group or something like that in an organization. We do that fairly often as well.
Sweet. And if for some reason you put a question in earlier, feel free to pop it in again, because it's the chat box is a little full at the moment. So feel free to refresh us on that. It looks like we have a question about how often do we offer these trainings? And at the moment, we're offering them fall, winter, and spring. So this is going to be our winter cohort. Yeah, and Phil asks, what time of day do the classes meet? Do you have to participate in the live class, or can you watch it when recorded? Daniel, do you want to answer that one?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the instructors are on East Coast US time. So generally it's usually in the afternoons, East Coast time, and mornings, Pacific, during the work week. That's usually when it is, but we put out a little doodle poll to those and we try to find the best time for each particular cohort. And recording. We do record them, and you can watch if you miss a session, but we do have an attendance requirement for certification of 8 out of 11 sessions. Show up in person for. If that's just not possible, you can talk to us, and maybe we can work something else out. But that's the standard.
Nice.
Yeah, and these are great questions about the logistics of the training and stuff like that. I'm super glad to talk about that. Also happy to talk about any of the kind of more conceptual things from the webinar as well. If there's anyone has any questions about the somatics or the tension process, that's great as well.
Yeah.
I'll go to this next one. Is the content live in discussions, or is there asynchronous content as well? There is. We have a forums. We do like an online forum thing, and we kind of do our homework in public and kind of share it with each other. So there's a discussion board element to it, as well as just some videos and some reading and some other kinds of homework and things like that as well, besides the live sessions.
Nice. And we got a question here about how do you keep this tension surfacing process from taking over the whole meeting time if there is no quick agreement on what to cover? I love it. Fantastic question. A couple of things on this front. One is you can build your agendas in advance. It's often a question we get. So once folks get used to this rhythm, you can pop your tensions up on the agenda at any point during the week. And that tends to speed things up at the beginning of a meeting. The way that we prevent this from taking over the whole meeting is that we limit people introducing their tension to 10 seconds. So you have to be really, really, really concise when you introduce what your tension is. And then we have everybody vote on the tensions through the voting process has multiple different indicators. And those indicators tell us, for example, that an item is urgent or it's short, et cetera. And then the facilitator is the one, we give the facilitator the power to actually choose based on the votes, the input from the team, which agenda items and what order to put them in. So we don't get into, arguments about this or that. We give everybody a chance to say what they think is important. And then we ask the facilitator to do the service to the whole group of choosing what's best. And the facilitator is elected. So if for some reason they aren't doing a great job with this, we can elect a different facilitator too. But thank you for that question. That was awesome. And we've got another one here. Could you provide some suggestions for how to respond as the meeting? Let's see, sorry, as the meeting facilitator, if you strongly feel that the tension raised is, for example, off topic or jumping far ahead or requires a more intentional process before digging into, while still honoring the tension that was raised and the person behind it. Wonderful, detailed question. I appreciate this. As the facilitator, you do have some power. For example, if the tensions that's being raised doesn't actually belong in this team context, it belongs to another team context, then that's facilitator has the prerogative to say, hey, please bring this to the right team context for discussing, just as an example. If it's jumping too far ahead, you can always ask them, what's going to move this forward for you for today? And that could produce something as simple as everybody to think about this further and come back with ideas to our next meeting. So that question of what's going to help you move this forward for today is a really helpful little prompt that helps keep folks on track and doesn't have us sort of going down too far into something that's not useful right now. A third item that I would mention is that it's really important for everybody on a team to know how to identify when tensions need to be separated from each other so that we're not trying to address everybody's tension all at the same moment. We parse them out, we give them each their unique space. And so as facilitator, you can say, hey, that's a great tangent. Thank you so much for thinking of it. Let's put it on the agenda as a separate tension and we'll get to it when we can.
Great. Yeah, any other questions? Maybe someone feels like being brave and speaking one out loud even. I don't know. We've got a few more minutes here before we wrap up. Anyone have any further questions or comments? I guess, yeah, Claire, go for it.
Is it ever okay to blatantly call out racism and sexism in the course of the tension? Or do you just say, well, that's a tension around sexism and I'm going to talk to you later about it.
That's a great question. Yeah, so I think my answer is going to be, unfortunately, it depends, but it does depend upon what previous conversations you all have had as a team as to racism, sexism, and that's what I would recommend is put attention up there and be like, hey, we want to be able to talk about these things in the middle of our meetings. Can we get consent from everybody to be able to do that and have a conversation about that? So it's normalized. And then when it is brought up, then you know what you're going to do with it. Maybe the team decides that, look, we just want to put a pin in it. And then we're going to come back to that conversation. Maybe at the end of the meeting, we have a special time where that is the time where we're going to talk about anything that's come up like this. So that you don't end up going down like a rabbit hole of arguing over, is that racist or is it not? We have a process, we have a place where we're going to process it in a way that's useful and doesn't just degenerate into arguments or hurt feelings.
One of the things I'll add as well, we have this whole idea in this model of collab, we call it collab, in CoLab, we have this model of what we call the 7 conversations, one of which is like our kind of our purpose conversations, which include values. So like, have we had our values conversations, and do we know where we stand with each other on terms of like, what are our shared values? What are we going to, because if we don't already have a shared value together of like, we're going to confront these internalized oppressions when we see them, if we have that value and we can rely on it, then yes, of course we would want to speak to that. We've agreed we're going to speak to that, right? But if that's not a value that the team can consent around, then maybe you need a different process for how to begin to surface these kinds of things and begin that kind of conversation. That's wonderful. Celine, you have your hand raised as well.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a little bit about like the somatics practice. I don't know why in my head I have this idea that like, I don't know, it's like a therapeutic technique that they need to be trained in order to help people move through like somatics and stuff like that. But as someone who's not a trained practitioner, if that's even a thing, are there guides or exercises that we can use to help us practice how to bring people into like building awareness around somatics?
Yeah, that's a great question. There are lots of trainings specifically about somatics, and our approach is not to, and there are certifications and all kinds of things related to the body and to somatics, of course. So there's deep learning that's possible there. And we feel that everyone's got a body and everyone's got a sense of awareness, and so we can pay attention to our body, and we can do this the simple version of it, at least to start with, at least, and that might just be like right now I'm really noticing I'm speaking really fast. So I'm just like, oh, I'm speaking really fast. Let me just take a breath and settle down a minute and come back to your question. So yeah, I think we can find simple ways to engage with the body and our awareness of what's going on for ourselves without needing to go into the deep waters of what's possible. And if you're curious, it's an amazing territory to learn more about, and to learn how to artfully facilitate, experiences for people around their body. So I guess that's my answer. Any follow-up questions on that? Because it depends, I guess.
No, that's actually really helpful as far as like simplifying the fact that like as someone with a body, I can call attention to what I'm experiencing and use that as a starting point. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Lovely. Well, we're coming up on the hour, but we had another question from Leander and Stas. Can you share more about your definition of consent? Yes. In this context, a work context, we define consent as a decision-making process that enables us to surface input into a proposal, take it through questions and comments, have an amendment round, and then a final objection round, which is objections are anything that would cause harm. And if harm is identified, then we integrate and change the proposal so that it no longer causes harm. And when we have no further objections, we call that a consented to proposal. Does that bring up any other questions for you? Feel free to drop them in the box or raise your hand. Yes, it is informed by sociocracy. There are some differences there in terms of how objections are handled, but essentially it's right from sociocracy. Yep. And Dresha, you had another wonderful question. I can imagine that it's important when introducing this to be clear on what attention is and norms around how to frame them. What language might you use for this? Like, do you frame attention as a question or as a noticing or as a problem to solve? Daniel, do you want to take a crack at that?
Actually, we don't have a whole lot of a lot about that. I think any of those are fine. It's when we're trying to get something onto the agenda, we're just looking for a quick title. It could be a question or a statement or any, we're just looking for a quick title that captures enough of the essence of what the underlying tension is, that we can know how to relate to it in terms of like organizing the agenda. And then when it's time to actually get into it, we ask the attention holder to just describe, hey, what is this? What are you sensing? Whether it's, are you sensing a question? Are you sensing a determination within yourself to say something like it would, and then all of those are possible and allowed in a sense.
Wonderful.
These are great questions. There was someone had their hand up. Now it's gone. I don't know if someone was wanting to speak out loud again as well. Well, we're at the top of the hour, so I guess it makes sense to just say like, thank you. Cecile and I can stay on for an extra 5 minutes. If you do have a few more questions, that's absolutely fine. And I just want to say thank you so much for showing up. It was wonderful to have you all here today. And if it's now's your time to go, please maybe we could just like all unmute and like wave and say thank you or goodbye or something like that. And then those who want to go can go. And if anyone wants to stay, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for
Thanks for
having us.
being here.
Thank you.